Welcome to Surviving Roots, the podcast where we journey through the complexities of our emotions together. I'm your host, Carrie Fund, and I'm here to guide you on a path of self-discovery, understanding, and healing. In each episode, we'll explore a range of emotions and experiences, from navigating grief and trauma to managing stress and anxiety. Through candid conversations, expert insights, and practical strategies, we'll uncover the tools you need to navigate life's emotional landscape with resilience and grace. So, let's embark on this transformative journey together. Take a deep breath. Allow yourself this time. This podcast is for you. Kareen Nassim is the co-founder of DayNew, a new technology platform designed to help people through trauma associated with grief and loss. After experiencing the sudden loss of her spouse, she realized that managing grief encompasses needs beyond what therapy alone can provide, both in her professional life and as a mother. Along with Eloise Bune, who also endured the unexpected loss of a spouse, they launched DayNew. Together, their mission is to build the go-to platform for when life hits you hard and unexpectedly. DayNew helps people through loss of a loved one, divorce, and illness by providing a customized roadmap for post-traumatic growth. Kareen is a busy mom of three and a prolific writer who shares her journey on Instagram. Welcome, Kareen.
Thank you for having me, Carrie.
I'm so happy for you to be here today and to share everything about this new amazing app that you and your partner have created. I appreciate your time. I know, mom of three, launching a new business. Let's get into it.
Do it.
By the way, congrats on the launch of DayNew. I'm really excited for everyone listening today to learn more about everything that you're doing to help others in their grieving.
Well, I also wanted to say thank you for having me. And I love that our sometimes bumping into each other at the park for dogs and kids turns into what I know will be a beautiful and soulful conversation. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I know it's we've never had coffee yet. We keep mentioning that sometimes, but I'm glad we were able, even though
Colorado and the park.
I know, and we don't live far from each other, but here we are on Zoom. I love it. You know what? Yeah. Moms, mom life, business life, whatever, but I will take it seeing your smile today. I love it.
Likewise.
Can you share your personal story and the inspiration by co-founding this amazing app, DayNew?
Thank you. Yes, I was married for 10 years, had 3 kids, boom, 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 and lived this kind of fun life with my husband, Aaron Hirschhorn. We had co-founded a business together called Dog Vacay that's now Rover. We had lived in LA together. We had had our 3 kids there and then moved to Miami, and we're settling into the almost big kid life. And unexpectedly, there was an accident and we lost him. And it was truly the biggest trauma any of us had experienced. And reconciling that reality was a challenge beyond, and it took time and support from my community. And with that support, I started to, learn how to walk again. I started to think about how to parent in this new world. And I started to connect with other people who had been through similar traumas. I was introduced to Eloise Bune, who became my co-founder. And, at first a friendship that was very deep and helpful in a million ways in terms of healing, because she had also lost her husband a few months prior to mine. Became this kind of amazing experience because we'd both been seasoned entrepreneurs who had a startup background. And, we just started to talk through from our different personality types, like how other people could be supported and how other people could be helped. Because as you know, the world has changed so significantly. We are going away from this mom and pop shop mentality and this community-based life to a global one and a mobile one. And we're in transit and there's a ton of information coming at us. And yet we've experienced real grief and loss collectively. Our lives have changed dramatically since COVID, the way we do things. Mm-hmm. How we, consume content, how we move through life. There's an app for everything. And yet, that support when you need it the most is fragmented.
Yeah.
It's kind of old school and very single faceted and isn't enough. It just
Yeah.
simply isn't enough. What I experienced was real executive functioning dysfunction,
Yeah.
right? It was hard for me to manage, like everybody, uh, a family life with, house and home management, with work, with, partnerships and all the things, right? So that when you kind of introduce major trauma, everything gets upended and there is more to do than ever when your brain just doesn't work in the same way.
Right.
We talk about brain fog, but the way grief impacts the brain is significant. Your cortisol spikes and you can't really see what's in front of you. And the shock of it is also deeply impactful, and the identity shift is deep and
Yeah.
big, big pill to swallow. So we wanted to ease that, and we wanted to create a platform that offered you support in a holistic way, right? So it's emotional, it's social, and it's organizational. So from the organizational perspective, here's a list of things that you can do with reminders and an AI layer that kind of coaches you through some of the things that you need to do, like get a will or life insurance or find a therapist for your children or donate somebody's belongings that, are no longer serving you, right?
Yeah.
Things are very challenging to navigate. And we also wanted the social network of it all. It is hard to be honest about what you're going through. It is hard for your people to fully sit with you,
Yeah.
beyond that first month.
I
So
love that you mentioned community and meeting her, meeting Eloise, because I do recall like when you were beginning your grief process, like I was really proud of you because my aunt probably a couple years prior had lost her spouse unexpectedly. He was very young, and we didn't know how to help her. We didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to do, and it took her a couple of years before she even saw a therapist. Maybe, I mean, honestly, I want to say 5 years. And she was just, pushing through and masking it and suffering in silence. And um, I just remember you going to these events and these seminars and really surrounding yourself and putting yourself in. And everything I would see you do, I would screenshot or text her and say, like, look at this event or look at this. I mean, you really showed that, healing is not just for ourselves, but like for your children. And you really seemed to take sort of like grief by the balls and just start doing the work sooner than later. And I applaud you for that. I really do.
listen, I mean, the interesting thing about living part of your life out loud when you're sharing in, these social platform ways is that people take from it what they will,
Yeah.
right? And that's 100% true, right? I hope to be very authentic in whatever I share, but in reality, it's also 1%,
Yeah.
so it's my style. Like
Yeah.
I'm a kind of type A, go, go, go. I didn't just become a mom, I became a mom that needed 100 new mom friends and figured out what classes and what devices and how to puree, blah, 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 right? So I attack a lot with energy and I didn't know any other way. And yet, 3 years later, I am, you know, peeling back, more layers of the onion, right?
Yeah.
It took me this long to feel truly functional in owning my life as it is today, right?
Okay.
In doing all the things that he would have done and doing them without dragging my feet. Instead, just quick, 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 let's get it done. The house has a leak. Okay, here's
Yeah.
call and that call. This kid has a blah blah blah. Like, let's call this one and figure it out. And I think I it takes a minute,
It takes a
healing
minute.
healing takes a minute and it looks different every season.
Yeah.
And, I have so much to respond to what you said, but now I forgot everything. So,
No, not at all. I mean, listen, balancing your own grief
which is
while
another thing, brain fog and memory.
listen, there's so many levels. I mean, we're all we're all going through it in some way, in some way. But balancing your own grief while raising children, emotionally must have been so challenging. So for everyone listening right now, like how did you manage it? Like what was the first step into managing all of these hats that you had that you were already wearing and having to take on and cater to your children's emotional needs? Like what's the first step with someone who is where you were a couple years ago? What's the first step?
So listen, I mean, I think that this is like the juiciest question of all because for me, I remember having this like out of body experience in the
Yeah.
week after I passed. I was at a Shiva and I was surrounded by my best friends and I felt like I was above looking down and I said, how do I make the best of this shit show? You know, what do I have to do?
Yeah.
Right? And what I have to do is own the full responsibility that I brought people into this earth and I owe them a mom, you
Yeah.
know? And so they became this filter that was in front of everything I saw, right? And and I knew that I had to mourn the kind of Betty Crocker version of me,
Yeah.
right? I no longer had the privilege and the capacity to noodle on every little thing in the way I might have, right? In that sort of type A version of me as a mom. And instead, I knew that the biggest lesson I could give them and the biggest source of love that I could provide them is to be an example. And the way I knew to be an example was to take care of myself and to model healthy grieving, right? And to be authentic in what our story is and
Yeah.
how confusing it is. And so, in many senses, we're holding each other's hands as we navigate things and they come up and we define them for ourselves. Um, I'm an immigrant. I didn't have a ton of family around me growing up. I didn't see, firsthand the traditions and the methods in which people coped with loss. So I remember looking to friends and being like, well, what am I supposed to do? And how am I supposed to dress? And
Hmm.
how am I meant to behave? And in the end, everybody's response was always, you do you, right?
Yeah.
And so this was me doing me and honoring my most important job. And the definition was, okay, you have to be a present and available mom. It doesn't mean that I can't, catch myself drifting into my own mind
100%. Yeah.
and the depths of my sorrow while I'm, shoveling mac and cheese onto plates, right? It doesn't mean I don't burn the broccoli. It doesn't mean I don't forget to pay the bill. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I don't start sobbing in the middle of their football games,
Yeah.
right? All of these things have happened
Yeah. You're
repeatedly
human. You're
and
human. Yeah.
I have a posse of moms who kind of know to text me when things are owed or I'm supposed to show up in a place. And please never go away because like I really need you. But you know, my balance was a clarifying of my value system. And my value system is I own full responsibility for bringing children into this earth, and I owe them the best version of me in this scenario. And I will support them navigating their own path, and I will accept that these are the cards that they have been dealt. And so, therefore, I'm going to teach them
Yeah.
best I know how, day to day, on how to read what they've been given and
Hmm.
play their own game, right? And that's, that's where I'm at.
I want to take a second and honestly just applaud you because coming from someone who had a very toxic upbringing and a mother that experienced loss and grief, um, she didn't do those things. We grew up within her grief, and everything became about the loss and the grief. So we really that was our childhoods and our adulthoods. So I applaud you because you really took on the responsibility of, I feel like what defines us as a mom is considering our children's needs and that unconditional love and what they need. And your children are very lucky. They have they have an amazing role model. So
Please tell them when you see them. Just make
they're
sure.
not going to realize it till they're older,
I'm
but
planting seeds in the world that they live in and be like, yo, you gotta,
you
I need
just
to have
need
my
to
back.
know that they are going to grow into even a more amazing just adults because of all the love and support and the work that you were putting into them now. Trust me. They're not going to, there's I think as all parents, like I know for me that I'm trying to do the best I can so my kids don't have to heal from their own childhood. So I feel like everything, just the love and support and the presence of you as their mom is like all kids really need. You know what I mean? Like that's all they need is for their mom to be present and to love them unconditionally. So that makes you like a superstar mom. So I'm just saying, I
Listen,
I
and
applaud you.
it's a mountain that you have to keep climbing because the self-care piece can take you out of the loop of the parenting
Yeah.
stuff. As the parenting stuff can very quickly throw you into the valley of martyrdom,
Yeah.
right? I um I am holding the balance and it is not easy because there's three of them. The youngest was 5, the eldest was 8 when it happened, and we were very much in it.
Yeah.
So for me, I knew when I say like I couldn't be that mom that I had been, um, I knew that it would become this balance of going out to dinner with friends because I needed somebody to listen to me
Yeah.
who I wasn't paying, not a therapist, right? And who I wasn't parenting.
Yeah.
And I needed to balance that against sometimes 7 basketball games and football games and gymnastics, blah blah blahs a week, right? Um, but I think that, to touch on what you said, and thank you for sharing. I am by nature a highly curious investigator, analyzer, and data collector in the way
Hmm.
I think about and approach life. It's exhaustive. We can call it overthinking, but it's like 10 layers deeper. I can create spreadsheets that go far and wide. And yet, even when I don't do that, my instinct is um, to kind of Barbara Walters, anybody I meet that shares about
Yeah.
their own experience. And what happened early on is people kind of bubbled up and shared about their own lives, their own losses. A lot of times, people whose mom or dad
Hmm.
experienced the loss of their partner. And more often than not, they became cautionary tales that deeply influenced how I thought about my kids. And I extracted for them truths. One truth was
Amazing.
Aaron was not going to be a hero in my kids' eyes. He was going to be a real person. And we were going to talk about the fact that he hated mushrooms and that he wasn't good at everything, right? I didn't want my kids to grow up with an image of a man that was kind of that
Yeah.
far away,
Yeah.
right? Another thing was to actually speak about him and to speak about him candidly and effortlessly, right? So the mushroom example is one that it's like that's where they're at. That's the level that they're at. As they get older, we'll talk about other things. And for them to feel confident, for them to feel at ease at the dinner table, bringing up a thought or something that somebody said, so that
Hmm.
we're going to navigate these things and the feelings that come with them, appropriately. And the last thing was to, touching on what you said, to be present, but also to take care of yourself. So it's like just being in it and being
Yeah.
real and being really like open with your heart.
Yeah.
It's beautiful because now, something as simple as a thunderstorm at night that wakes up a child, and they come in and they say, I'm scared, but they don't just say, I'm scared. They start to articulate, well, what if, lightning hits the house? And how am I protected? And what's the plan? And da da da. And they're starting to be able to articulate how they navigate potential crises
Yeah.
and risks. And that articulation comes from processing out loud and doing it as a family.
Yeah. I mean, it's your personal experiences and your grief have undoubtedly shaped DayNew. And I would like for you to um like walk me through it. Like I'm a new user. Like how does this app work? Because just everyone listening now and all of your insights and your wisdom from all of your healing and your experience on this journey, how does this app help me, for example, individually?
Okay, great question. So, in very practical terms, you can download the app or use it on your desktop. Once you do, you can answer a few questions. It's almost like a dating profile where we get to know
Okay.
you and you
Okay.
share about what you've been through, where you're at, your personality type, different aspects of your lifestyle. Are you retired? Are your kids at home? Right. And
Hmm.
then that helps create this customized roadmap to your own healing. So we like to think of this as both collective healing, but also very purpose and mission oriented in the sense that we are trying to help you move towards post-traumatic growth, which I'll get a little bit more
Yeah.
into.
Okay.
And and the way, a person does that is by becoming more functional, by processing, and by surrounding themselves with community. Right. And
Yeah.
so becoming more functional is facing the things that you must do.
Do we hear
Right.
that? Do you want to repeat that? That's really good.
Becoming more functional is about facing the things that you must do. Right.
Yeah.
And that requires organization. It requires strategy. It requires chipping away and consistency. That is just hard anyway.
Yeah.
It's hard anyway. And then when you pile on, insurance bills and claims and parenting challenges and family things and like group dynamics and work and all these things, it's very debilitating,
I
right?
imagine this is why a lot of people don't sort of get into the work of the grieving because I mean it
Yes,
it just
yes,
sounds like
they feel
you
lost
can't
and
even get under
overwhelmed.
the out of like you can't get from under the rock to even climb the freaking mountain. So,
That's exactly right. So you open this app, you basically do like a little metric of how you're doing. How
okay.
emotional are you? How lonely do you feel? How overwhelmed do you feel? Right? The same way like a psychiatrist or psychologist may do an intake.
Okay.
And then there's this AI layer that can say, hey, listen, it seems like it's a hard day. We know about your trauma and why don't you try, doing this, right? And then there's the checklist, which can remind you in as gentle a fashion as you want of all the items that you may need to do or may want to tackle today. It can keep
Mm-hmm.
the list for you so you don't have to keep it here and keep forgetting, right?
Wow.
You can add prioritizations, you can add categories, you can add time allotted for each one, and you can create reminders around it. And it's anything that would be emotional, organizational, or social. So something as simple as take a walk around the block can be an item on your list. Listen to that like Oprah interview can be an item on your list. All the administrative, financial, legal stuff, they're already pre-populated that you can check them if you want to because they pertain to you or not, right? You can remove them. You can create your own items and put it in your own words. And
Wow.
the most amazing part about that is actually the community section is essentially a public facing um, category of your list that can be shared on our community page. It's your community page. So you, Carrie, can create this for yourself or somebody could create it for you. And
Okay.
you can share it with an invitation link to your community, your village, and they can see that, okay, in lieu of flowers and casseroles, what you really need is a little help with your dog. Like
Yeah.
walk my dog for me or come and sit with me and help me go through, my person's stuff and figure out what to donate. Or actually like I really need you to drive my kids. So
Yeah.
these are the kind of low-hanging examples I have, but it's anything that you need. People that are ongoing, treatment and dealing with illnesses need a lot of support and they're not in a position to ask. So it's a more elegant way of asking. So that touches the community page aspect, right? The way to actually recruit your personal village.
Yeah.
You can even add a GoFundMe or a Venmo if you're needing financial support. And again, it's a little bit more elegant because everyone's always like, I'm
Right.
here in any way.
Right.
But after a month, you're not hearing it as much and you're not really confident to say, actually, this is what I really need.
Yeah.
Um, and there's so much more to that. I mean, the people that sign up can say, listen, Kareen, I've been a corporate lawyer for 30 years. I'm happy to help you with any legal stuff. You can have an hour free of my time, but also I love organizing drawers. So if you need anything, like let me know. And that's it.
Wow.
And I get to remember that that person that knew my person is happy to help and in fact would be touched to do that, right?
Yeah.
And then the next feature that I'm super into is called the Find a Buddy. So I can find somebody going through my exact same thing. I can read a little bit about whatever they want to share. They can be as public or private as they wish. And some of the things that they share, beyond this community page, which can be private as well, um,
Mm-hmm.
and what they share about their loss or their trauma, which by the way could be anything from divorce to an illness diagnosis or some other, aspect of life that's challenging. Um, the Find a Buddy feature is interesting because we have another feature which is called prompts.
Okay.
So prompts are like therapy-based questions, and you can think about it as like you're kind of like pocket therapist or life coach. A question may be, what was the most triggering thing that's happened to you this past week? Or, when you hear a song,
Yeah.
that affects you, like where does your mind go? Right. And you can journal that response. You can just think about it the way a therapist might give you homework. Or you can journal it and actually share it. In journaling it, your responses can be kept private on your profile, or they
Mm-hmm.
can be shared. When they're shared, you can associate tags with it. And then other people going through similar things, or maybe that have answered the same exact question, can find you via the tag. And maybe the tag is, cancer loss or cancer survivor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then they can meet you and they can connect with you in DM, and maybe you find your own like Eloise, right?
Yeah.
The silver lining in my journey was our friendship because I felt there was this one person on earth who actually knew what I was going through and was going through it at the same time, right? And that can be very meaningful.
Yeah. How
And
did you
then
meet? How did you
we
meet?
were introduced through a friend.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And she doesn't even live here. She lives in Connecticut and I'm in
Oh,
Miami.
really? I love that. Wow, this app sounds like I can now see where you just said how you love like spreadsheets. Like I feel that you just have really thought of everything in terms of the layers of support. It honestly sounds almost like an amazing life app. Like so many of us go to social media to like numb ourselves or to find people to connect with or a sense of community or for answers, which you're not getting. We should just go to DayNew.
You should download DayNew. You should
Yes.
fill out your questions. You should check in every day and say how you're doing. You should answer a prompt. You should check your list and figure out, what do I want to keep top of mind and get accomplished? What do I need to
Yeah.
for a little while? You should check with your community page and see who's in your life that actually is ready to help you. And then you should continue to consume content that elevates you. We have a
Yeah.
great content piece that brings you wonderful TED Talks or inspiring little meditations and ways that you can start to stretch your mind around different therapeutic modalities. You can find somebody else going through something similar and you can continue to be involved in a community, a
Yeah.
community of people who are working on achieving post-traumatic growth, which to come back to is this idea that you live a life of greater meaning and purpose, not in spite of what's happened, but
Okay. I love that.
right? So what does that mean? It means that in the year that I was developing DayNew, it was the year that I got out of bed faster. I raced to my computer to talk for 2 hours with the developers and stretch my brain around the layers of thinking that's required to figure out how to develop an app like this. And even though I'd been an entrepreneur who'd worked in the tech and startup space before, I'd never
Mm-hmm.
worked in this capacity. And to do it in my 40s with a broken heart and 3 children and navigating my own healing was to be able to think out loud and to drive towards this place where, wow, maybe I can help other people. And maybe that's why this has happened to me. And that alone is the most significant part of my healing. The
Yeah.
most impactful thing is that I'm able to say that even though I'm not necessarily wired to be the one that's standing in the soup kitchen every Sunday or with every spare minute of my life, I am wired to see that what I've been given and the way that I'm uniquely positioned, I can leverage into something that can hopefully help other people navigate their own healing and do it on their terms,
Yeah.
right? Because the way you heal is different than the way I heal.
Yeah.
Right.
Not a one size fits all.
And I can present to you that without a doubt, movement, right, is part of healing.
Yeah.
Being in nature is part of healing. Being amongst good people that are supportive and provide unconditional love is healing. And working on yourself and continuing to process your emotion and doing it with patience and doing it with grace and with space, but also complementing it with tools to develop the function of living your life and facing the things that you don't want to face is deeply, deeply important work. And unfortunately, hard to navigate, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing there that's doing it for you.
I
Therapy
mean,
alone isn't enough, right?
I was just going to say this app is really transforming the landscape of mental health support because it's sort of like having a therapist in your pocket, but with community and then organization and all of those tasks and things when you are going through something like loss or divorce or any kind of trauma that I feel like those things are the things that sort of keep you from getting out of, from under the rock, all of the to-dos and the things. It's just like responsibilities that you never had to think of. So this app is really transforming mental health support. And that's got to really feel so good for you to just be of such service to others, like, and also fuel your own healing. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just a beautiful
It's beautiful.
cycle.
It's beautiful. I
Yeah.
I don't wake up a day and not feel like I got sucker punched and also like I have the strength to get out, to
Yeah.
get up, to stand, to move forward, right?
Yeah.
It's both, and it happened early, it happened early for me because perhaps I was looking for the meaning. I think you need the meaning. I think you need to find the purpose. Otherwise, you don't know how to keep getting up,
Yeah.
right? And I think, first and foremost, it was my children.
Yeah.
It was me saying, I don't have the luxury of, being in bed.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get up for them, right? And then I'm a sharer and I'm a writer and I shared and I wrote and I did it, on Instagram and I started to get lots and lots of DMs from strangers and it just like didn't make sense, it didn't compute. And
Mm-hmm.
it was always consistent with like you're helping so many people and I just didn't get it because I was kind of like a trauma virgin,
Yeah.
like I hadn't known such pain.
I should mention that before DayNew, I remember, are you still sharing? Is your Instagram still open to the public? Because your stories, you are a beautiful writer and your stories, your vulnerability, I mean, really was your superpower. I mean, I connected so much to your stories just in terms of not the exact details, but just the pain. And I just feel like I would be laying there with you sometimes when you were writing, or if you were writing from bed or something, you really connect with words and your pains, and your writing is beautiful. I mean, beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
remember when you used to share those stories. Are you still doing that on your Instagram?
Yeah, I mean, it's
You're a
not
little
even
busy with your
for
new
dating.
app and being a
It's
mom.
it's memoir oriented. I write the way I write. I think the way I think. Sometimes it goes deeper. Sometimes it's more measured.
You think you'll write a book?
It all takes time. As somebody who came from like a filmmaking, screenwriting background and
Yeah.
who had always had to sort of like source like the emotion and the experience either from my imagination or from mine or somebody else's experience. I knew that, at least on a kind of high level, that the way I was feeling when it first happened would change,
Yeah.
that time would shift things for me. Not to say that time is the only healer. But it will change no matter what, right? So I felt it important to capture what I was going through, and I felt that it would be important for me at different stages to be able to reflect back on it. And in fact, a huge part of my healing and processing
Yeah.
was letting myself reread what I had written and published, and reread the comments. In fact, the comments were the things that made me feel less alone,
Yeah.
that made me feel supported, that made me feel loved for, if not the sharing of the experience, but of the quality of my writing, another aspect of my identity that had
Yeah.
been kind of pushed aside in having children, right? And in
Yeah.
starting businesses and in pursuing, livelihoods. So to have my writing validated felt good. It felt
Yeah.
like a hug in the midst of, shit show. So,
Yeah.
and to feel that that was actually helping people and to start to scratch at a truth, which I've now come to understand, which is a big part of the inspo for DayNew, which is that putting words on things, naming feelings,
Mm-hmm.
creates resolution, which is really important when you
Yeah.
think about therapy and processing. It creates connection far
Yeah.
and wide in more ways than I'll ever be aware. And it really it spins your story however you want to spin it in that particular moment. And it can
Yeah.
continue to spin and evolve and become something. And
Yeah.
for me, it was a poetic expression of a depth of feeling I hadn't known and couldn't even wrap my mind around.
Yeah. It's a
So,
beautiful example of how our stories really connect us. They connect us, and if only people were more inspired to share not only the pretty things, but the painful things, because we have so much more in common, I think, as human beings than we will ever know, because I think perfectionism and shame keep us so silent sometimes. But I remember your stories. They're beautiful. I want to ask you, do you ever think you'll write a book?
um, so yes, I hope to. And I will
Good.
come to you when I do because I know you're
Good.
going in the right direction. I definitely want to write a book. Publishing is challenging and I didn't want it to take me away from birthing this platform and this
Yeah.
community. Because I actually think it will deeply influence how this particular
Yeah.
book ends and the way I frame it. But, I am one part a beating, bleeding heart who is healing in live real time. And one part, a business person and, a person when I allow myself to be a very organized thinker in a way that I can frame things that help others. And
Hmm.
so kind of figuring out what that formula is, and the connection of those two themes is going to be the exciting part of how I think about this book. And also what I want to say is that the, me writing helped me understand that my writing helped other people. Me writing helped me understand that that helped me heal. Me creating with Eloise prompts as a huge part of the connection arm of
Hmm.
DayNew, and also the processing emotional arm of DayNew is something I think is such an important part of healing, not because everybody needs to be a writer. On the flip,
Right.
actually, you think it's important to share because like I with you we are together normalizing the conversation around grief and trauma,
Right.
right? Like, this is one of our core missions.
Yeah.
Because we know that it helps you move through it to become functional, to become thriving, to achieve that growth.
Yes.
But separately, Joe and Jane are able to do it on their own terms. They're able to process on their own. They can see a question and let themselves noodle on it and let themselves cry and look at a river,
Yeah.
right? Like, all that is also supremely important. And they can be the ones that just read other people's content and prompt responses and comment. And so, it's this kind of beautiful circle.
Yeah, I love that you say that. And I just think that the art of writing, like, you don't have to share it. It can just be for you. I mean, just the other day, my daughter was going through some crazy emotions with all kinds of things. And I said, take out your journal and just write it down and write with your whole heart, and no one's ever going to read it. And so she sat there for a little bit, like 10 or 15 minutes. And then she's like, well, now what do I do? I said, well, read it. And then I want you to rip it out and I want you to crumble it. And I want you to go, we were in a public place, and she went and threw it away. And I was like, do you feel better? And she's like, well, yes. Why? I said, because you got it out, you let it out, and you read your thoughts, and they're only for you. You don't have to share, but sometimes, like, you just got to feel your feelings. And because kids sometimes, I think, don't know how to express themselves. I mean, adults sometimes don't know how to express themselves, but yeah, I just think the art of writing is so therapeutic. And I think everyone should try to incorporate that within their life if they can, on a weekly basis. And with the idea that no one has to see it. Not everyone has to share it, but it can still, make you feel better. I want to thank you for being here today. How can we all find the app and to contact you? Where are you? Can you share?
Okay, so you can download the app at the App Store or Google Play. You can also just type in www.daynew.com. It's DayNew, like a new day. And you answer a few questions. You can do it right away or when you're ready. And I just implore that you keep going back. You keep getting to know this app. It is super robust. There's tons of features to it. The more you play around and use them, the better and richer the experience will be. You won't always be ready, but when you're ready, when you're noodling at night and you're kind of going deep,
Yeah,
those are the moments. And to find me, I can be reached on my Instagram, Karine Dream, KarineDream. And our company Instagram is DayNew app. We're also on Facebook and all the other platforms.
Thank you so much. So if you're listening and this is something that you need, when you're ready, DayNew is there for you. And so is Karine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karine, so much.
Thank you so much, Carrie. It's good to be with you.
Good to speak with you, finally. Thank you for joining this week's episode of Surviving Roots. Let's continue this conversation as a community. For more updates about the show, remember to subscribe on iTunes and leave a review. Also, there will be some special bonus footage from the show on Instagram at carrie.fund. I'll see you there.